Ajnanaतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जना शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नारं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नयनं चरणनिके। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So we begin by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanitya Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Padasta Talsat Sri Srimad Abhaya Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and Sri Guru Pada Padmanitya Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Padasta Talsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosvami Maharaj, and unto our exalted Rupanuga Guru Varga. Okay, so I did a little shortened Mangala Charana because it must be difficult to wait for the lecture and have to go through such a long Mangala Charana, so I shortened it a little bit. So, now we're on verse 2 of the Sri Damodarastam. Rudam tam mohor netra yugman marjantam karambo jajugmena satanka netram muhusasya kampatrire kanka kanta stita graiva damodaram bhakti badham. And so, seeing the stick in his mother's hand and being fearful of being beaten, he is weeping incessantly and rubbing his eyes again and again with his two lotus-like hands. His eyes are extremely restless and filled with fear. He takes heavy breaths again and again that cause the pearls and other ornaments around his neck, which is marked by 3 gracefully curving lines, to tremble. O Damodar, you have been bound by your mother's Vatsalya Bhakti. For my obeisance unto that Damodar. So we begin with the Digdarshani Tika of Sri Sanatana Goswami. This is a translation. It's called the Bhavanuvad, which is a translation of, not direct word for word, but a translation of the moods and intents of Sanatana Goswami. I think that's good now. So, he says, the excellence of Krishna's extraordinary Leela is depicted in this important verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, again, 9th chapter of 10th canto. Right? Kirtagasam tam parudantam akshini kasantam anjam masani swapanina udvikshamanam bhayaviva lekshanam haste grahidva bishayant yavagurat. Mother Jashoda watched as her naughty child cried bitterly and rubbed his eyes with both his hands. The black ointment from around his eyes mixed with his tears and spread everywhere. Seeing her son with his eyes full of fear at the sight of the stick she was brandishing, Yashoda took him by the hand and began to gently reproach him in order to instill fear in him. Remember, in the last verse, he had broken the mortar. Yogurt had come out. He ran out of the room not to be discovered. But his little lotus feet left footprints in the yogurt. And she followed him into the next room where she saw him with his back to her, having stood on a grinding mortar so he could reach high into the ceiling where there was a pot of butter hanging. And he was eating it and feeding it to the monkeys and the crows. And she snuck up on him, and then the monkeys saw her, ran away. Krishna realized, oh, mother's here. He ran, but she caught him. And now She's got him by the arm, and she's got a stick in her hand. She's not going to beat him, but she's threatening him. So, Sanatana Gosvami continues and says, in the stanza beginning with Rudam Tam, Sri Sattvatt Muni fully captured the meaning of this Bhagavatam verse. In following with the second half of the previous stanza, he continues to establish his worshipful Lord's supremacy through descriptions of his unique pastimes. Right, that's important. It's Krishna's pastimes that clearly, unequivocally establish his supremacy, right? Which we have mentioned in many ways. Let's see how he develops this. The Lord's supremacy through descriptions of his unique pastimes. Appreciating the same pastime that is described in the above verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, he spoke the present stanza thus, quote, when he saw his mother holding a stick, he became apprehensive, fearing that she would surely beat him, because he knew he was guilty, right? Now he is hoping that by showing her how afraid he is, he can avoid being punished. So, Rudam Tam, he cries bitterly, and Karamboja Jugmena Netra Yugman Murjantam. He rubs his eyes again and again with both his lotus-like hands. Now, listen to this. What is being said about this rubbing of the eyes? That he just keeps rubbing his eyes with both his hands is in keeping with the natural behavior of a child. This is the special characteristic of his Balya Leela. Means his little, baby, very young, 2.5 years old. The special characteristic of his Balya Leela. And it is one explanation of Karamboja Yugmena Netra Yugman Murjantam. But this phrase also indicates two alternative meanings. The first of these is that there are actual tears that instantly came to his eyes due to his fear. In order to make these tears fall from his eyes, he continuously rubs them with both his hands. The second alternative meaning is that continuous streams of tears are already flowing from his eyes, so he rubs his eyes with both his hands to wipe away the tears. So either the tears are already there and he's just wiping them away, or he's rubbing his eyes to create more tears to gain more sympathy from his mother. Right? Oh, he's weeping and weeping, looking so vulnerable and remorseful. Oh, please don't punish me. Either way, Mother Jashoda's heart is going to melt. Right? Doesn't mean she's not going to correct him, but still, to see that beautiful form. Sattvatt Muni now is entranced by that form of Krishna. And his little lotus-like hands, his fingers, each finger is like a little lotus petal. And his limbs are so attractive and effulgent. And his lotus-like eyes, we can only imagine. The meaning of Satanka Netram is that even his eyes are expressing that he is afraid of being punished. His mind must be overwhelmed with fear. If his eyes are fearful, then his mind, because the mind is the chief of the senses, right? Otherwise, it may be taken to mean he is casting his glance in all directions because he is greatly agitated by fear. His attempt to avoid being beaten by his mother is another of his unique confidential pastimes. So even in this threatening condition, he still has his wits about him, and he's scheming to get away with it. And moreover, Muhu Swasena, because of his continuous crying and constant heavy sobs, Kanta Stita Graivam, the pearl necklace and other ornaments around his neck, which is marked with Tri Re Kanka, 3 graceful lines, like the ringed grooves on a conch, are also trembling, kampat. Sri Damodar, whose belly becomes bound by ropes, appeared thus. By this description, Sri Satyavat Muni has captured the meaning of another verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, a little further in that same chapter, chapter 9. Tam matva majamavyaktam martyalinga madhokshajam gopikolu kale damna bandhana prakatam jata. Just as an ordinary mother in this world may bind her mischievous son, so Mother Jashoda, simply considering Sri Krishna to be her son, tied him to the grinding mortar with a rope, as if he was an ordinary child. The above verse mentions that the rope was knotted both at his belly and at the grinding mortar. Thus, the sage has revealed Sri Krishna's unique supremacy. Oops, lost my place. Okay. Krishna's unique supremacy by describing his Bhakta Vashyata Vishesh, his special quality by which he allows his devotees to control him. Sri Satyavat Muni says, Bhakti Badham. The meaning is Bhaktyaiva Badham. Sri Krishna is only bound by bhakti and nothing else. In other words, it was not the strength of all the ropes that was able to bind him. Rather, he submitted to being bound, on one hand, because of the power of Sri Jashoda's bhakti for him in the form of motherly affection, and on the other hand, because of his own special quality of willingly being controlled by his bhaktas, like his mother, in the form of his bhakti for her. That is why, even when Mother Jashoda tied all the ropes she had gathered together, she still failed to bind him. There always remained an inexplicable gap of 2 fingers. This is described in the next verses of that 9th chapter of the Bhagavatam. Tadama badyamanasya swarbhakasya katagasa dvangulonam avuttena sadhade nyachchagopika. When Mother Jashoda tried to bind her mischievous child, the rope was 2 fingers too short. So she added another rope to it. Yadasi tad api nyunam tenan yad api sandade tad api dvangulam nyunam yad adata bandhanam. However, that was also 2 fingers short. In this way, each and every time she tied on another rope, it was always 2 fingers too short. Evam sa gehadamani yashoda sandadatyapi. Although she had tied together all the ropes in her home, Mother Jashoda could not bind Krishna. Seeing this, the gopis started giggling. Utterly perplexed, she also began to laugh. So Sanatana Gosvami goes on to explain, the other reason that his belly became bound with rope, Damodarastam, is that Bhakti Badham. He is completely enchanted exclusively by the bhakti of his devotees. So this theme is reiterated over and over in the previous paragraphs, and in fact, throughout this pastime. This is the main theme. This is Krishna's speciality in Braj. And it's a speciality of the Brajbasis, because only in Vrindavan will Krishna be willingly controlled by the love of his devotees, because their love is so pure and complete. And they love him for his identity as a son of Mother Jashoda and Nanda Maharaj, as a friend of Subal and Sridam and Dam and so many cowherd boys, right? As the Govinda, the protector of the cows, the gopas, the gopis, the land, right? Giriraj, the lifter of Govardhan. So many ways in which they love him, but they always think of him as their dear, darling Krishna. And so he seeks that, he wants that. Vrindavan is the realm where he becomes immersed in that special kind of love that can't be expressed anywhere else. So he is completely enchanted exclusively by the bhakti of his devotees. This meaning actually leads to the previous one, that he becomes bound because of his bhakta vashyata, his willingness to be controlled by his devotees. In regard to this, Srimad Bhagavatam further states, Swamatu Srinagatraya Visrashta Kabarashaja Vishta Parishramam Krishna Kripaya Sit Svabandhane. So Sanatana Goswami is confirming the tattva and the pastimes of this prayer of Satyavrat Muni by reference of the Bhagavatam. Right? So that verse means she had become exhausted by tying so many ropes together, and her body had become covered with perspiration. The flowers woven into her hair had fallen from her loosened braid and had scattered here and there. Seeing his mother's fatigue and feeling compassionate, small Krishna then allowed his mother to bind him. Evam sam darshita hyanga harina bhakta vashyata swavashenapi krishnena yasyedam seshvaram vashe. O Parikshit Maharaj, this entire universe, along with the powerful demigods who control it, is completely under the control of the supremely independent personality of Godhead, Sri Hari. Yet, he has allowed himself to be bound in order to show that he is willingly controlled by his devotees. And this will also come up in one of the verses. He's controlled by that love. And this is the theme of our entire Krishna conscious movement, that God is love and love is God. God controls us by his wonderful qualities that we can't help but express love towards him. And because of our love towards him, the more refined, pure, and selfless it becomes, the more we have the opportunity to actually control him. But not control in the false ego way of this world for our own interest. The love of the gopis, the love of Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, all others, their activity, every thought, every activity is always meant to benefit Krishna, right? In every way, always done with the most favorable, selfless, loving mood. We heard that. Anyabhilashita shunyam, jnana karma dyanavritam, anukulyena, Krishna anushilanam bhaktiruttama, right? So, willingly controlled by his devotee. Then, Nemam Varincho na bhavo na shrirapyanga sankshaya prasadam lebire gopi yat tat prapa vimuktitat. Now, the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, who bestows salvation upon all, never showed Lord Brahma, Maheshwara, Shiva, or even his eternal consort Lakshmi Devi, who is half of his body, the kindness he showed this gopi, Jashoda. Another verse to add to the collection to show that the worship of Krishna is so exclusive and rare and higher than the worship of Lakshmi Narayan, right? We were discussing that yesterday morning when we were on our virtual parikram of Belvan, right, where Lakshmi is doing austerities to be able to enter into this Krishna Leela, or at least come close to be able to watch closely. Nayam sukhapo bhagavan dehinam gopika sutta jnaninam chatmabhutanam jata bhakti matamiha. Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the son of a gopi, Gopika Sutta, is not at all easy to attain for the Ashtanga yogis who identify themselves with the body and who perform severe austerities. Nor is he easy to attain for self-realized jnanis who are absorbed in all-pervading non-dual knowledge. But those loving associates who are absorbed in serving him, simply considering him to be the darling son of a gopi, have easily attained him. In other words, although the ascetics and impersonalists undergo great trouble, instead of attaining the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, they merely attain an incomplete or partial expansion of him, either Brahman realization, or perhaps Paramatma. These verses have conveyed the aforementioned reason for being bound. Later in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Krishna declares, this is in the 10th chapter, the following chapter, Devarshir me priyatamo yad imo danadatmajo tat tata sadayishyami yad gitam tan mahatmana. Devarshi Narada is my dear devotee. Therefore, even these two brothers, the sons of the most wealthy demigod Kuvara, had no devotion for me. Still I must fulfill Sri Narada's words by appearing directly before them and granting them my devotional service. That's the next chapter, describing the liberation of the two sons of Kuvara, Nalakuvara and Manigriva. Right, the second part of the same pastime. And the last paragraph of Sanatana Gosvami. The deep meaning of this statement spoken by Sri Krishna is that he enacted the pastime of delivering the two sons of Kuvera in the form of twin Arjun trees because he was pleased by Sri Narada's devotion to him. Indeed, he enacts all his pastimes because he is pleased with the bhakti of his devotees. This is yet another important meaning of Bhakti Badham. He is bound by bhakti. Okay. So tomorrow we'll read the Darshani Vritti, the commentary of Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, explaining and illuminating further that which Sanatana Goswami has explained for our benefit. Okay, so all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Gurudev, all glories to all the assembled devotees. Oh, today's disappearance day of Sri Narottam Das Thakur. All glories to his lotus feet. Haribol, Haribol.